Hey everyone, this is Lynn Wilson at Lynn Wilson Originals here in Mills River, North Carolina. And today I am working on finishing reupholstering a love seat. If you were on my live the other day, you saw how we started sort of the preliminaries. I told you what tools you need to pull staples and what you're going to need to put on gimp. And at this point, I am actually affixing the material. So let me see if I can get you a little bit closer in here. Let's see, yeah. So this side is my last area that I need to complete. And you can see this was the original padding. A lot of times these old pieces have horsehair, and I believe this is horsehair, but I think it's been bleached white. It definitely has that same feel that I'm used to, but I have not ever seen it in white. So I'm using the old padding, but you know, over the years it's gotten worn down. So what I do, you can buy this cotton batting in a large roll at the fabric store, and it's not like buying the bags of stuffing. This comes in a huge roll, and then you just unroll it. And so I'm going to put this to sort of freshen up this padding. And when you're doing this, make sure I have this in the right spot. When you're doing this, what you really want to make sure is that you're not extending beyond the original padding, because what you want to avoid is stapling into the cotton, because ultimately, if you can see over here where I've done my staples, you're going to have to cut back to your staples and then affix your gimp. And when you have the cotton caught in your staples, it makes it really hard to cut back and to cover up with your gimp. My upholstery instructor used to always come around and tell us, take more cotton off, take more cotton off. And, you know, I was like, well, so what if I staple through it? Then I finally learned through the years, it really saves you time when you have to cut back the fabric if you're not trying to cut back cotton as well. So I'm just going to look at where the cotton is going over the edges and just pull it off. You don't need to cut it. You can just pull it with your fingers. And the other thing, my upholstery instructor is amazing. He's been in the business for like 40 years, and he just knows everything. And you know, he tells us time and time again, you know, upholstery is about feel. You want to actually feel what the person is going to be feeling as they sit in your chair. And if there's lumps or bumps, then you need to eliminate that. So I have cut out a piece of fabric, and the other thing you want to be aware of is you want all of your fabric direction to be the same going up. So if my seat, for example, my seat, I'm looking at this pattern right here, this little piece, and I want on my cushion, my back of my chair, to be headed in the same direction. And you know, it wouldn't be that noticeable on this fabric, but something like if you had flowers, it would be very noticeable. So I'm going to find that piece that I've been using, this one. It kind of looks like a dog or something with the nose, and see if I can find it on this piece. Yes, there it is. And so I have my nose headed down that way, so I need to flip this so that my nose is headed in the same direction. And then I usually just double check by looking for some others. Like there's a triangle that has a noticeable direction. There's another one. There's one. So now I have my fabric in the same direction, so that if you're looking at this, everything's going the same way. Now I'm going to start stapling, and I apologize in advance if my compressor goes off because it gets really loud when that happens. A lot of times when you're doing upholstery, you've got sort of a frame. Like if you can see here, when I staple, I'm going to be stapling right up against this frame, and that makes it a little bit easier to align your staples. On this one, for this portion of it right here, whoever reupholstered this prior to me actually put their staples into the wood rather than behind the edge of the wood. So at this point, I need to follow what was done previously and put my staples in the same place. So it does make it a little bit more challenging because you have to kind of keep picking up the fabric and making sure that you're going into the old nail holes or staple holes. So when I start by putting one staple in each part, each side, checking that my fabric looks like it's straight across. And it's important that you get your fabric rather taut, but you don't have to go crazy pulling it. In fact, sometimes when you pull fabrics, you'll distort the pattern. So I just kind of smooth my hand over like somebody was sitting in it and get the excess fabric down. And I'm going to do the same thing down here. And I looked and I'm seeing my cotton has extended over as I pushed this down. So I'm going to have to go back now and pull some more of this cotton off. And then I'm just going to try to tuck what's left under the old padding to get it out of the way. So now I've got one staple in on the top and the bottom. I'm going to get one in on each side. And so here I'm going to staple right behind this frame. And you can feel your staple gun up against the frame. On this side, again, I'm going to be stapling into the wood because that's what was done previously. These are the staples that I use. I get them from Genco Supplies, and they say 71/12. So it's 12 millimeters, which is about half an inch. And the quality of your staple matters, because if you get cheap staples, if you have to pull them out, which a lot of times, even when you're putting the staples in, you're going to end up pulling out a fair number. They break, and so a quality staple doesn't snap in the middle. So now I have one staple on each side of my square. So I'm going to go back to the top, and I'm going to move to my corners. And as I'm doing that, I'm sort of pulling my fabric into the corner. And there's always one way which seems easier than the other. Guess it probably depends if you're left or right-handed. And as you start getting your fabric more tight, you may find you have a little bit more padding than you need. So I just make adjustments as I go. Occasionally what I do is I make sure that my staples are going to be covered by my gimp. You know, you've got some wiggle room here, but if you start kind of stapling out of a half-inch range, then your gimp won't cover your staples. And I used to do that when I first started doing this. I did that all the time. I'd have to pull my staples when I went to put on my gimp to get them in better alignment. So now top and bottom are both within kind of a half an inch. So I'm going to start working on the sides. Oh, lots of extra batting. I used to save this thinking, oh, I'll make stuffed animals or something. No. I just started collecting more and more and finally decided, yeah, this is something I don't need to hoard and keep. So now I'm going to start moving up towards the corner, pulling my fabric as I do so. And so I'm trying to pull my fabric in this direction so that when I get to my corner, I'll have a nice, no wrinkles in my fabric. That doesn't always happen, but I kind of sneak up on the corner on both sides. So there is a little bit of puffiness right here. So what I'm going to do, where my fabric would end up wrinkling, so I'm just going to take a little bit of cotton and fill that area in. And it helps to have one of these, either an envelope opener, or this is just a really long needle, so that I can press that cotton in there. There we go. So now I don't have any wrinkles, and I'll just put my gimp right over my staples. So do the same thing down in this corner. Actually, I think I'll do this corner first, because it's easier to see. And this is a little tricky coming through here, because you can see you've got the carvings, the carved leaves are really close to where the staples go. And that's because whoever did this before me didn't go into, or stapled on top of the wood rather than going into the frame, which I'm not sure why, but so I'm just using my finger here to feel where the wood part, where the wood flowers are. so I can avoid stapling into them. So now I just have my bottom two corners. So this one, I got too close to the wood. So I'm going to have to take that one out. And this is the staple remover that I like. It's by CS Osbourne, and it has these sharp tips, which make it easier to get under the staple. Also easier to poke yourself with. And then you just need a pair of pliers. So I've got to come in a little bit. And a lot of times once I start trimming my fabric, I'll see maybe I need my staples closer together because the fabric's starting to pop up. But for now, I think I'm pretty good. Now this side will be easier because I have the frame. So my next step is now to trim back to the staple marks, staple line. And sometimes you'll find like this staple doesn't feel like it all the way in. It's not flat against the surface. So I'm going to take that one out, and if I can find where I put my staple remover. I don't know if you guys do that, but when I'm working, I just seem to toss my tools. So I want this one to be flatter. And that's just a matter of making sure that the head of your staple gun is flat. So right here, my staples look like they're further apart. So I'm going to double check with my gimp and make sure I'm going to be able to cover them. I'm taking this one out because I don't like how it makes me move my gimp, take the line off my gimp to cover it. So taking that out, I'm going to be able to cut a little bit closer now to the staples. And it's going to look more like a straight line. So it's going to take me some time to get cut close to all of these staples, but I do want to show you how to apply the gimp. So let me get this is my glue gun that I use. It's Surebonder. I think I got it at Hobby Lobby, and it's turned off now because it turns off automatically. I'm going to try to get it to heat back up. While that's heating up, I'll keep cutting, but then I can show you how you use the hot glue to put the gimp on. And I did the back already. I always like to do the back first because then I can see what problems I'm going to have. In this case, the gimp being black, when the hot glue when I'd use too much hot glue and it soaked through, it would look white. And I've never really noticed that on gimp before, but I've never used black gimp. So, you know, that was helpful to learn on the back so that I don't use too much glue on the front. That's usually what people notice. And I had painted this piece before I started, and I sealed it with Dixie Belle's Satin Clear Coat, which I like. It has some water resistance, it's fairly durable. But in the course of reupholstering, you kind of mess up your paint a little bit. So I know that I'm always going to have to go back and touch up. So the gimp, like, you buy it by the yard. And so before I go in the fabric store, I'll measure the gimp that was on the existing piece so I have some idea, and I always buy a little extra. And when they cut it for you, they put a piece of tape over it because it will ravel. And find the end here. And when you start to apply, I cut it and then I fold over the end. There we go. And then you just have to decide, where do you want your pieces of gimp to meet? Do you want it in a corner? Do you want it in the middle? I like doing mine down at the bottom because it just is the least obvious place. So I'm going to start by just getting the end attached. I've just kind of estimated where I think the middle is. And then before I glue, I kind of stretch the gimp out so I can see the line that I want. And then I just make sure that I've got the glue going over the staples. That's what you're trying to do, is hide your staples. And then I run my hand just kind of lightly over it. Initially, when I first started doing this, I wasn't really sure of the tension. I'd mash it down, and then I'd get it kind of a ripple effect. So you don't really need to mash it. Just put your hand over it gently. Now, I'm hoping you can see this corner that I'm going to do here. Your corners, you end up doing your corners like this. Let's see, like this. So you get a little triangle in your corner, and then just keep moving on. So I put a little drop of glue right where I'm going to do my fold to hold the fold down. And you don't need a lot because this is where it can seep through, and then you've got a big white blob in your corner. And I just hold it for a minute, make sure it's on there well. And then I just start down the next row. And I had never used a hot glue gun before I started this, so it does take a little getting used to, I think. I mean, I just wasn't very crafty. People in my class were like, wait, you know, it's just hot glue. And I was like, well, I've never used a glue gun before. So I just go nice and slow. But now I've gotten the hang of how hard to pull the trigger. And you can always go back and add glue later. Like right under here feels like it could use just a tiny amount. So my line is looking good through here. I'll just add some more glue and keep going. Right up to close to my corner. Make sure that I don't cover up any of the carving. A lot of times I like to do this with the piece standing up so I can see how it's going to look. I've done it lying down before, and then I stood up and you could see underneath certain areas where you know, I didn't get it tight enough against the wood. But at this point, I'm pretty confident that I know what I'm doing sometimes. So now, get that on, and I'm going to make my little corner fold. So I'm looking at how this is going to lie through here. Am I going to get all my staples covered without hitting the wood carvings? And yes. So now I can go ahead and make my little corner. And start down my line. And I'll do my corner fold, make sure that my line is right. I need to cut that back a little bit. So I'm going to do my corner. Hold that for just a second. And then head on down the line. And as I do this, I'm going to try to catch that edge of material and pull it in. All right, so now I'm getting down toward the bottom where I can just kind of estimate the amount of gimp I need to finish this off without being too far off. Give myself a little extra room. And this glue gun, when you start running out of glue, like it needs glue to push the other glue stick out. So of course, I'm just about to the end and I need another glue stick. And when you get close to the end, you're going to do the same thing to keep it from fraying. So you're going to want to flip it under. So I've cut a little bit excess before I get to the end so I can turn it under. And this stuff is a little bit stretchy, so like at times when I thought I was going to run out, I have tried to pull on it to make it stretch. So that's matching up pretty well, and then I'm just going to glue that last bit down. And that's it. Hopefully I'll be delivering this to my customer this weekend or the beginning of the week. Hope you have a great afternoon. Happy Friday. Bye-bye.